Today I'm going to talk about some of the problems that our governments are having in dealing with terrorism and various other problems. For example, on the 14th of July of this year, a killer took a truck and drove about 2 kilometers down the street, the promenade in Nice, killing over 80 people and injuring over 300. But nobody saw this coming. And then again, 8 days later, in Munich, a young man, a killer, got a gun and went shooting people in a shopping center. He killed 9 and wounded over 30, and nobody saw that coming. This is not, unfortunately, isolated. These are not isolated events. This is typical. Most of the terrorist attacks that have occurred have never been seen, or there is no warning in advance. And this is in spite of the fact that our intelligence agencies are collecting so much data on everybody on the planet. Now, the problem here is that they can't find information inside massive amounts of data to be able to alert and be able to stop these attacks. I mean, after all, that is what intelligence agencies are all about. They're supposed to be able to warn us of impending attacks so that somebody can take some action to stop them, so that people don't continue getting killed or wounded or injured. Unfortunately, they've adopted a different attack. Now, this is the same problem that I've devoted my entire career to. This was also there in the analog years in a different form, but it was still the same typical type of problem of massive amounts of data and massive probabilities, combinations, and things like that. So it was nothing new in terms of a logic problem. It just shifted from the analog years to the digital years. So we applied those techniques that we had performed that worked well in the analog years to the digital application. And we basically put together a system that would detect threats in massive amounts of data. Originally, we started with the threshold. We wanted to look at 20 terabytes a minute and be able to filter out only those things that were relevant and important for targets that we were after, like terrorism or dope smuggling and so on. We basically used 2 fundamental techniques to do this. One, we looked at targeting known terrorists or criminals and those who were directly connected to them in some media like phones or email or in banking, things of that nature. Or we had to, of course, exclude companies and government agencies because they have a broad spectrum of communication. Like, for example, if we included Google, if a terrorist went and used Google and included all the people that contacted Google in our second hop, which was our zone of suspicion around that bad guy, that would be virtually everybody on the planet, because how many hundreds of millions of people use Google every day, and it's not the same set day after day. Eventually, everybody, or virtually everybody on the planet, will use Google. So you have to eliminate those kinds of companies and government agencies because of that factor. That was one of the main factors we used, and the other one was to look at it, that we called that the deductive approach. And the inductive approach, which is what we used to look at people who were visiting sites that advocated jihad against the West, or violence, or sites that advocated pedophilia or other criminal type activities. That we called the inductive approach. Those 2 approaches, basically, there were others we had, but those are the 2 main ones. They fundamentally defined the zone of suspicion for people that we looked at and pulled data out. So we used that to select data on the front end, and all of the rest of the data simply went by. We never took it in. And we built further protections in. Everything we put in our databases were audited, so anybody coming into our network looking at any data, whatever they did, wherever they went, they were audited all the way, so that we knew, like, for example, Edward Snowden couldn't have taken the material out of our system because we would have detected him as he did it. And everything was run by software, so it was all alerted automatically. So it wasn't a question of having people look at data to find something. The software did that for us. Unfortunately, our program, like many other programs, could be subverted, and this was. It was subverted to spy on the entire world by NSA management under General Michael Hayden. And Unfortunately, though, we hadn't implemented all the automation plans that we had intended to put into our software, which was automating target development out of massive data and also automating detections of threats and other kinds of software that we wanted, and